I met a girl during my time at the Institute, and from that point on, we were inseparable. After 3 years of dating, we decided to move in together, spent another 3 years living under the same roof, and eventually we got married. 2 years into our marriage, my wife became pregnant, and soon enough, our lives were graced with the arrival of a daughter. That's the story of how we built our life together. Sure, there were the usual domestic disputes, but who doesn't have those? We always patched things up quickly, sometimes even while still arguing. Pretty much what you'd expect from a normal family. After finishing my studies, I landed a job, then moved on to another, gradually working my way up the career ladder. Eventually, I earned enough to buy us an apartment. We gave it a proper makeover and moved in. My wife also got back to work after her maternity leave. She did well, securing a good position and earning a respectable income, which, combined with mine, put us in a very comfortable financial situation. Over time, we had it all. A home, a secure future for our daughter, luxury cars, and a house filled with every comfort we could ask for. I loved my wife deeply and was always faithful to her. Drinking? That's just not my scene. My wife's job had her dealing with international business, so her colleagues often flew in for negotiations. About a year ago, I started noticing that whenever these colleagues were in town, my wife's work days stretched later into the night. At first, I didn't give it much thought. But then I began to notice something odd. She'd get messages on Telegram or WhatsApp just before bed, but on nights when these colleagues were around, the messages stopped. A few times, after she'd fallen asleep, I felt uneasy and decided to check her phone, only to find all her messages had been deleted. I distinctly remember hearing her phone ping around 11 one evening, but when I checked it later, there was no sign of any new messages. As time went on, suspicion started to eat away at me. One evening, she came home late again, around 10, and I teased her playfully. The look of fear in her eyes was unlike anything I'd ever seen, but she quickly covered it up with a smile when she realized I was joking. She called me silly and looked away, trying to brush it off. On top of everything else, she also began traveling abroad to meet with these colleagues. And as my doubts grew stronger, I reached a breaking point. I couldn't stand the uncertainty any longer, so I secretly installed a spy app on her phone. This app allowed me to monitor her phone's activity, record her surroundings, snap photos with her camera, and send it all to my private account. That day was the hardest I've ever faced. I couldn't settle down. I was completely at a loss about where to go or what to do. My mind was in such turmoil that it was like a constant buzzing in my head, drowning out my own thoughts. I sat on the couch, crying like a child. Then came waves of anger, followed by apathy. But the more I let my emotions out, the lighter I started to feel. I could sense something inside me, everything I had nurtured over the years in my relationship with her, beginning to wither away. By the end of that day, I was almost emotionally numb. That evening, I returned to my personal account and began sending commands to her phone. Photos started coming through, first from her purse, then from the table. I listened to recordings that confirmed she was at a restaurant, surrounded by others. It seemed like she was indeed with her colleagues. But it was later that evening when things took a darker turn. Again, the phone was placed on the bedside table, and I could hear both their voices. But this time, there was more than just casual conversation. And then, I couldn't hold back. I called her. She answered on the fourth ring, and I could hear her catching her breath. I asked what had happened, why she was so out of breath. She claimed that the hotel's elevator was broken, and she was walking up the stairs to her room. We only spoke for a minute. It took everything in me to keep my voice steady and calm. I told her I was heading to bed, wished her a good night, and hung up. Then I sent a command for the phone to take a series of photos using the front camera. And that's where she slipped up. After we finished talking, she placed her phone on the bed instead of the bedside table. The front camera started sending back slightly tilted but still clear enough images, showing her sitting naked, straddling a man. And then came the audio recordings with those unmistakable sounds that any husband would instantly recognize, knowing exactly what was happening. That was my breaking point. I saved the recordings and the photos, though, at that moment, she felt like a total stranger to me. I didn't try to find out anything more until Sunday. It was all too clear already. My mind started racing with thoughts about what to do next. Divorce, a scandal, and then there was our daughter to think about. She's only 9. On Sunday evening, she came home and tried to kiss me. I pulled away, using the excuse that I was still sick, but I had to fight the overwhelming urge to lash out. I ended up sleeping on the couch in the study. The next morning, I got up before she did and left for work. I couldn't stand being around her. I spent the entire day at work like a zombie, barely functioning. When I got home, I gathered all those recordings, loaded them onto a USB stick, and even recorded a video message on my phone. In that video, I asked the questions burning inside me. Why? What were you thinking? Was I such a terrible husband all these years that you could just throw me away like this? It was a typical outpouring of pain, the kind of emotional release you'd expect in such a situation. After that, I went to my boss and told him I needed a week off, effective immediately. I called my wife and told her that I had an unexpected business trip and would be gone for the day. I asked her not to pick up our daughter from her grandmother's, telling her I had a surprise planned for when I got back that evening. When I arrived home, she was already packing my bag, acting as if everything was perfectly normal, playing the role of the innocent wife. The sight of her hypocrisy made my blood boil. I grabbed my bag, tossed the USB drive onto the bedside table in the bedroom, and quietly took a taxi to the second apartment, the one we had bought for our daughter. It was empty, just as I needed it to be. From there, I called a friend and asked if he felt like taking a spontaneous trip abroad for a few days. He was game, so we booked tickets and flew to Munich early the next morning. In Munich, I finally told him everything. We drank, wandered the city, and yes, spent time with women. Honestly, I no longer felt any obligation or guilt toward my wife. I ignored her calls, only sending her a brief message that there was a USB flash drive on the bedside table and that she should plug it into her laptop. About half an hour later, my phone started blowing up with calls and messages from her, but I didn't even bother to check. I was beyond caring and just turned off my phone. We stayed in Munich for 3 more days, enjoying our time away. When I finally flew back home on Saturday, I turned my phone back on. It struggled for a good 5 minutes, trying to process the flood of messages she had sent. I didn't read any of them, not wanting to stir up my emotions before walking into the apartment. As I stepped inside, the apartment was eerily quiet. I silently put down my bag, kicked off my shoes, and was about to wash my hands when she emerged from the bedroom. I had never seen her in such a state, swollen, disheveled, with no trace of the person I once knew. She dropped to her knees, trying to choke out some sort of explanation through her sobs and tears. I kept my face stone cold and told her not to turn this into a spectacle. Then, in the calmest voice I could manage, I asked what we were going to do next. She begged me to forgive her. She broke down, saying she had lost control, that she had no idea how she'd let it go this far. She started calling herself all kinds of names, but I realized that I didn't feel anything anymore. No pity, no anger. She screamed that she loved me, that she always had. But, as they say, revenge is a dish best served cold. I told her that, as of now, we're no longer husband and wife. We're just a mom and dad for our daughter, and we'll pretend that everything's fine. But I'm going to live my life, and she can live hers. I told her she's no longer the only one for me. She's just my co-parent. Maybe one day I'll change my mind, but right now, the thought of being close to her makes me sick. I even told her where I'd been and what I'd been doing. She said she understood and was willing to endure it, however long it took. Well, nobody forced her to admit that. So now, we still live in the same apartment, although To be honest, I've already bought another place and put it in my dad's name, just in case things go south and we have to divide assets. I mostly sleep in the study, though I occasionally go to the bedroom just to see my daughter. My wife has tried to hug me a couple of times when I've been in the bed with her, but I've stopped her every time. We haven't been intimate for 6 months now. I haven't told my family anything, except for my dad. We agreed that once a year we'll go on a family vacation for a week, but we'll sleep in separate beds. These days, I'm spending a lot of time with friends. I even bought myself a motorcycle again. I quit smoking, hit the gym, and gained 10 kilograms of muscle. My body's back in shape, and my abs are starting to show again. Sometimes I wonder if she'll reach her breaking point, maybe decide she's had enough and leave, or even file for divorce and split everything up. But she hasn't done that. I still catch her watching me, with those big, sad eyes like the cat from Shrek*. But honestly, I just don't care anymore, even though I can see she's trying. I find a strange satisfaction in her pain. Recently, I left a pack of condoms on the desk in my office, just to see how she'd react. She walked in to say something, saw them, and then stormed out, probably to cry. I didn't bother going after her. She still goes to work, though she doesn't stay late anymore. Not that I'm really keeping tabs on her. Once, she tried to explain to me that she cut off all ties with that guy, except for work-related matters, and that they might still need to communicate via email or during negotiations. But she swore she wouldn't get close to him again. By the way, he has a family too. When she brought it up, I just told her that her relationships with her sexual partners don't concern me anymore. She can do whatever she wants. There's no need for her to inform me about whether she's spreading her legs today or not. These days, I sometimes come home late or leave just when our daughter is going to bed. On Fridays, for example, I don't hold back on anything. If I want to have sex, it's going to happen, no question about it. I'll come back in the early morning, head straight to the study to sleep, or to the bedroom if she's not in there anymore. As for our household routine, nothing's really changed. I still buy groceries because I love cooking and I'm good at it. The cleaning is still handled by our housekeeper, so no changes there either. I've been paying for the apartment, and I continue to do so. Where she spends her money, or if she even spends it at all, is none of my business. Our communication, the kind where we used to be like people who love each other, is now reserved strictly for matters concerning our daughter, or when her parents come around. Although I have a feeling that if I ever told my mother-in-law about what happened, she'd probably strangle my wife right in front of me. I've always had a great relationship with my mother-in-law. She's a smart woman who takes family values seriously. I'm sure that's another reason my wife doesn't want to leave. She's probably terrified of what her mother would say. Her mother would certainly want to know exactly what the hell is going on. These days, I just send my wife packing whenever she comes to me with personal requests. I tell her she should have found herself a lover from the same city, someone who could double as an assistant. In short, I mock her as much as I can, and I take a twisted pleasure in it. Yes, I might be a monster now, but she's the one who created this monster, and honestly, I'm amazed at her resilience and patience. It's like waving a red flag in front of a bull for me. I'm curious to see how much more she can take. And don't give me the "she's the mother of your child" talk. When she decided to cheat on me with that guy, she clearly wasn't thinking about her daughter or her husband. For 6 months, she was off on her business trips, sleeping around without a care in the world. So this is my life now. Everything is fine with our daughter. We're still great parents to her. I still help her with her homework in the evenings. Our mutual friends have no idea what's going on. Maybe one day, when I've had enough of testing her, or when I decide it's time, I'll turn off this bastard mode and have a real conversation with her. But that day isn't today.